GOP aimed at winning the governor's office and the state house majority, riding on Biden's unpopularity and the parents' rage.
Xi Jinping's absence at COP26 dashed Biden's hope for climate change result.
And the feature story of today would be the part 2 of a continued interview on how CCP colluded with the criminal groups against the West. Welcome to Wei and Kathy Show. I'm your host, Wei Fang.
And I'm Kathy Zhang.
All right, so how are you doing? And so what would happen to the midterm election of 2022? Look at tomorrow. The Virginia statewide election will be happening tomorrow. And what are at stake?
So that's the Virginia governor's race, and the Virginia State House could change hands after 2 years of Democrat control. Why is that?
Because before we move on there, actually in Virginia, Democrat control everything. They have the governor's house, they have the secretary of the state, they have the attorney general, and then they have both houses of the state legislatures. All right, but because of the President Biden's unpopularity growing in the state, and because of the parents' concern over the public education, especially about the critical race theory that will be reported to you often enough, the unknown governor candidate, Young King from the GOP side, could grab that office. And the Washington Post reported that Wednesday that an army of the Republican poll watchers involved in locations across the state, including in deep blue Fairfax and Loudoun County, and they're being registered for that.
Right, and in these two counties, the parents are really concerned about the schools districts are pushing for the CRT, the critical race theory teaching. So Fairfax County Republican Committee Chairman Steve Knotts said that he did not believe voter fraud was an issue in Virginia, but 500 to 600 persons signed up to be the poll watchers, and said that those numbers point to broader enthusiasm for Young King.
And an experienced political analyst said so much money has been pouring in the race of the state house. He said, I have never seen in a decade I've been watching Virginia politics so many House of Delegates candidates who have raised over $1 million for a merely $18,000 per year job.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That's the first time I know that.
Yeah.
So they got like $1,500 a month, right? That's the thing.
It's basically a stipend.
Yeah, actually, yeah. That's what I told my Chinese audience, that the political system is so vastly different from China. And, the public officials, they are not supposed to be well paid. And this traced back to the founding fathers and the writing of the creation of the Constitution, in which the founding father concluded that the public office holder, they should not be paid abundantly, because otherwise it would attract bad people to those positions. Okay, their honor and their fame is enough to reward them, so they are not supposed to be paid well. And that explained that $18,000 per year job, but 18 fundraisers, they attract $1 million, over $1 million, all of whom, they are Democrats, except one is a Republican. Mm-hmm. All right. So despite the massive amount of money raised by Democrats, all but one of the top 9 are ranked as competitive races, and many others are rated as the toss-ups. And to understand how competitive the race is, the Ballotpedia has labeled 25 districts as a battlegrounds district. So we'll see. It's not certain that who will get the office, but this is a very, very blue state. Now it may turn purple or something like that. So we'll see what will happen at this time tomorrow. All right, let's move on to the COP26. The COP26 is called actually United Nations. The full name is this: United Nations Climate Change Conference of Parties. The COP comes from Conference of Parties. And the first meeting was held in Germany in 1995. So this year is the 26th of them, 26th conference. And it is being held in the Glasgow of the Scotland. And then this is a meeting that President Biden really count upon. He wants to really achieve something, score big there. And because of that, he did a lot of work before even he leave for the UK, because he wanted the Congress give him enough basically the Build Better Back Act, so that he got enough money to convince his colleagues in the European and other part of the world that they should be committed to the climate change thing. And however, it doesn't seem to be anything will be produced, anything this serious. The reason? Because Xi Jinping did not show up. Not only he did not show up, he did not even do a video speech. 2 days ago in the Rome, in the G20, Xi Jinping did not show up. He gave a video speech, but with the COP26, he did not even give that. What does he do? He just sent over a letter, and which was published on the website of the COP26. Not just that. Okay, Xi Jinping actually ordered the China, all over China, they're gonna speed up and increase the coal mining, and so basically the order says this: they're gonna dig out another mine another 220 metric tons of coals in the next year, which would be a 6% increase over the same time of last year. Why is Xi Jinping so important? Because 28% of all developed, 28% of all the emitted carbon in this world come from China. All right, that's more than all the developed country combined. And China also digs up and burn more coals than the rest of the world combined. And just in one province, kind of Shanxi province, okay? And the coal that they dig out is twice as much as the entire nation of the U.S. And Australia. So as we all know, that the U.S. is not a closed room. If you close everything, and in China, the chimney still just spew out the carbon is going to come to the U.S. too. So that's why it's so important that for the world leaders to making sure that Xi Jinping follow the agenda, but he does not. And why? Why did not make this agenda? Why did he not come to Rome and to the Glasgow? 2 reasons. To my observation, first is because he cannot face the inquiry from the questioning from other world leaders on the COVID-19. Nearly 5 million people died as of now. And the second, he made a promise in September last year that he's gonna advance the China's goals of neutralizing the carbon, meaning that cutting the carbon emission to zero, okay, by 2016, which really got a lot of people excited. And but the fact of the matter is, he's not following through. Not just that, he's increasing a lot of coal mining and coal burning, so that China can supply enough power. In the September, China lost a lot of power. They have shut down so many plants, and it really just undermined the goal that the CCP has set for itself. So because of that, in October, they have ordered the reopening of the many coal mines in China, so that they can dig out enough coals to burn in the power plant, so that they can produce enough power to power the economy. And so what about their promise? Well, they always make promise, but let me just quote Pompeo, Secretary of State Pompeo's word: whatever promise CCP gives, distrust and verify. Okay, back then with the Soviet Union, President Reagan said, we trust you, but we'll verify. But now it's about distrust and verify. This applies precisely here. This really applies here to the CCP's most recent promise of last September in the United Nations Assembly, in which Xi Jinping made this bold promise of cutting back the carbon emission and reduce that to zero by the 2016. So Kathy, let me ask you a question. Do you remember that? Why? What's wrong with the Pact of Paris, in which President
Paris
Trump.
Accord.
Yeah. He exited. And over there, okay, what Xi Jinping said is that you Western countries, okay, you industrial country, advanced, developed country, you have burned enough coal. Now it's our turn. We need to burn some because you've burned enough for decades. We haven't been industrialized enough. So we need to have our turn, and then we're gonna peak in 2013, 2030, and then we reduce. So back then, Obama and all the Western world, they're not. But President Trump is like this. Are you really serious about this climate change as the fatal to this planet? If you do, you wouldn't allow this, right? Because we have polluted it so much, in the past that threatened even the health of the planet. And then now with China, just do your own pollution. That means they're not serious about this thing. But anyway, I think President Trump does not even believe in this climate change. So anyway, he just quit out of it. And the New York Times have this report, and in which he said this. I think it's truthful. It said that why Xi Jinping made this bold promise last September, because that's 40 days away from the election. While President Trump said he quit from the Paris Pact, Xi Jinping stepped forth and saying that we're gonna lead this whole thing to try to influence the elections 40 days later. How much impact it does make, I don't know, but that's the story. Anyway, that's the CCP's word and how trustworthy it is. Okay, let's move on to the next. The feature story, actually, Kathy had an interview last Friday, and then now she has the second part for you.
Right.
First, remind us what the story is about.
So this interview was with Canadian journalist Sam Cooper, who wrote this book called Willful Blindness, How a Network of Narcos, Tycoons, and the CCP Agents Infiltrate the West. So what he exposed was how Chinese Communist Party made deals with some tycoons from Hong Kong and who were connected with the organized criminal groups. And also how they colluded with the drug dealers, including fentanyl manufacturers. And then using casino underground banking to launder money for CCP and to infiltrate Canada and other Western countries. It really started with the real estate market mystery, as Cooper discovered when he was a young reporter like 20 years ago. And so he traced back the operation to the 1980s, even before Hong Kong was handed back to the Chinese Communist government. So as you can imagine, before 1997. Yeah, so the CCP already, they basically controlled Hong Kong and already started to use Hong Kong tycoons to infiltrate the West. And then from investment to the real estate, then to other like the high tech and the important resources such as oil companies. So these type of pouring of investment all serve one purpose, which is giving the control of the West to CCP. So that's the summarize of the first part of the interview. So one may ask why CCP's such a kind of infiltration operation can go on in Canada for 30 to 40 years. So my second part of the interview starts with this question. Maybe that's why Sam Cooper named the book as a Willful Blindness. But who are the persons who turned a blind eye to the problem?
So the willful blindness, of course, is a legal concept, and it's aimed at people in government, politicians, regulators, that their job and their duty is when they have a perception that an illegal or a shady transaction is occurring, they should step in and do the proper regulation. However, in the case of Canada, my book makes the case at a very broad level that officials right at the top of the federal government in Ottawa on down to casino administrators in British Columbia, on down to police officials, really on down to broad levels of British Columbia society. They didn't want to know the origins of all this money that was flowing into Canada's economy, and in the case of Vancouver, boosting especially the real estate market. It seemed that everyone was getting wealthy. It seemed it was good for Canada. It was good for Vancouver. So there was, until it became clear that there's really a grave harm to this. For example, Vancouver becoming one of the North American epicenters of heroin and fentanyl overdoses, or the real estate market becoming very, in my argument, influenced by underground banking and narco proceeds. Until those harms are seen and understood, it could be easy for government officials to turn a blind eye to what they should know are shady or at best mysterious transactions. But that's what occurred in British Columbia and Canada. I don't think that anyone will be able to argue against that when they read the evidence in my book.
And you have mentioned that your sources some of them are Canadian intelligence agents. So how they answer your question about that?
Oh, I need to protect sources, but it's obvious to me that criminal intelligence and civilian intelligence, military intelligence in Canada understands that this is really a 30 or 40 year crime trend, and that is coming back to the idea that at a high level, the Chinese Communist Party made deals involving the tycoons of Hong Kong who were connected to organized crime, and they determined that everyone will work together, and there's an objective as investment floods into areas of real estate in Western cities, or into high-tech companies, or into sensitive resource such as oil, water, that this will be good. This will be good for the party because it gives the party leverage and control in other countries. Now we come to know at a high level that China is involved in the Belt and Road, these types of projects. They're, according again to my sources in intelligence, these are of money laundering and espionage for China. This is what my intelligence sources would say.
So it sounds like the 30, 40 years of operation by the CCP towards Canada and the other Western world country, maybe, on a scale, it's a smaller version of the One Belt, One Road.
Yes, that's a great analogy. I think it started in Vancouver at a very broad and large level. And I'm saying that Vancouver is a special city in my investigations because there has been so much investment from Hong Kong and China. And I'd like to say that, of course, most of the average people involved in the investment are of course, great, honest citizens. Some may have used underground banking perhaps because they wanted to escape the Communist Party. And there are a lot of good reasons to take your well-earned and legitimate money abroad and escape if your family is in danger. But what my sources would say, within all that flood of investment and travel to cities like Vancouver, there was a significant amount of organized crime that is being used by the party. And so it started at I'd say a large level in Vancouver. Other cities in the West, it has built up, and now we're in the position where these Belt and Road projects are moving out worldwide. So it's reached the industrial level. And let me add that Vancouver has adopted a large Belt and Road project, the only of its kind in North America. So my sources would say, and I agree, that's a huge national security risk.
What's the consequence of government and the other West countries' willful blindness? Can you elaborate on that?
The consequence has now started to be answered in these national security and intelligence reports that are completed by a small number of parliamentarians in Ottawa. Their reports are heavily redacted, but over the last few years, they've become sort of increasingly clear in their explanations that the consequences of infiltration from the Chinese Communist Party, of it exporting its methods of surveillance and attack on the rights of citizens, is the erosion of democracy in countries like Canada. These reports from Ottawa realize and lay out the example that Australia has taken very strong countermeasures against the party's infiltration methods with strong foreign interference laws in recent years. Canada hasn't followed, and that leaves Canada at risk of the elites, especially politicians, being influenced or captured by very determined and sophisticated efforts from the party to infiltrate society at all levels. Another consequence, as I show in my book, could be that Hong Kong Canadians, Chinese Canadian critics of the regime in Beijing, feel that they're under surveillance and under really harassment and under attack by agents of the party who are very close or directed by consulate officials. And my book shows also connected to organized crime suspects in Vancouver and Toronto. So you can imagine that people that have traveled to Canada or the United States to enjoy freedom and democracy, to live great lives with their family, are starting to have the feeling that they're being followed by the party. They feel that they self-censor. They cannot even criticize the party because they're not safe and protected in their new homes in cities like Vancouver, Toronto, and of course, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle as well.
Yeah, I think you really had a good point that the willful blindness by some of the immigrants from China or Hong Kong actually really having a grave consequence on themselves too.
Yes, and from my talks with sources in Hong Kong Canadian, Chinese Canadian community, the vast majority of people want nothing to do with the Communist Party. Once they've left that country, of course, they still have fondness and family connections in mainland China, but they don't want to be leveraged and surveilled and controlled by the party or owe their allegiance to the motherland just based on race, ethnicity. And so some people, though, as my book shows, and perhaps it seems to me some of the most wealthy and powerful immigrants within these communities are very complicit. They're getting benefits for helping out Xi Jinping's magic weapon, the United Front, and they are beyond the willfully blind. They're involved in intelligence and interference operations against their fellow former Chinese citizens who have left that country to start a new life and be citizens of different countries, such as Canada, the United States, and Australia.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the Canadian officials or politicians who are involved, what do you think is the deeper reason for them to just being willful blindness, to allow this to happen? Since they have been enjoying this democracy and freedom in Canada for so long, don't they realize the CCP's nature?
That's a great question. In Canada, there's a level of ignorance, naivety about the party. However, within the past 2 years, that's no longer an excuse, as we've seen. The reaction or the fallout of the Man Wanzhou case was that 2 Canadians were kidnapped in a case of hostage diplomacy. So no elected official in Canada can any longer claim that they don't know the brutality of the party. And my book, I believe, if Canadian politicians are lazy enough to not read the book, then they're at their own peril, because my book contains solid evidence that if you're a politician in Canada, you will be the target of influence. It doesn't matter what background you come from, what race you are. As my former CSIS, as my source, a former CSIS director said, any ethnicity will be targeted. It's not just, of course, People's Republic of China that is trying to erode Canada's democracy. Countries such as Russia, Iran are very active in Canadian cities with these same methods. But the Communist Party is the number one threat at many levels. So you ask me, why are they willfully blind? At some level, some Canadian officials, of course, have secret dealings with the party and are getting direct benefits. And it's my intention to continue to investigate so that names will be named, and this should lead, if laws are changed in Canada, to greater exposure of who people are really working for. Are they working for the Canadian people, or are they working for another government?
And during your investigation, what's the most challenging part?
That's a great question. I have to think for a minute. On a personal level, the most challenging part is sort of the counterattacks that come from people involved in the United Front. I detail that in my book, that I never wanted to make myself part of the story or put myself out as a victim. I know that many, Hong Kong Canadian leaders or Chinese Canadian leaders have been the subject of surveillance, harassment, and attacks. A story was just posted very recently about a number of hackers traveling to Vancouver from mainland China and seeking to find backdoors or weaknesses in Western technology so that this could be used for the targeting of Uyghurs. And so Canada is being used, Canadian cities are being used in Chinese intelligence operations. I set out to expose this, really these shocking details that are for some people hard to believe. And that made myself as a journalist a target from people that didn't want this information to come out. And we know, of course, people that have exposed the genocide in Xinjiang have been attacked by members of the United Front or the Chinese Communist Party. So it's very prevalent. That doesn't make it easier to bear. So that would be, I would say, the biggest challenge for myself.
When you started to do the investigation till you finished the book, what do you think is the most thing that is one thing that you just really did not expect, give you the strongest shock?
I never stopped being shocked. I explain it this way in the book, that I was raised, my education in Canada was that this is such a safe and protected country with such strong laws, that a deep level of corruption, massive money laundering, deep organized crime infiltration, deep espionage infiltration doesn't happen in Canada. And so my level of discovery started with British Columbia government casinos, where these gamblers that were brought in junket operations to travel to Richmond, BC, after being recruited in Macau by organized crime loan sharks who said, we will lend you cash in Vancouver. These gangsters were bringing in duffel bags stuffed with $500,000 up to $1.2 million in one single transaction. I don't think anyone could not be shocked that this is happening in a Western country. How can this level of corruption be happening in Vancouver? That's one of the early examples that blew my mind. But as I got deeper into the story and learned that very connected Chinese communist state actors, People's Liberation Army figures, were becoming community leaders in Vancouver, and yet my confidential leaked RCMP documents said they are very high-level organized crime suspects who are collecting and cashing large amounts of restricted weapons, who own gun shops, who are hanging out with the fentanyl kingpins, violent, criminally convicted loan sharks in Vancouver, and yet they're meeting Canadian politicians, smiling while standing beside Chinese consulate officials. This level of shock never goes away that this is happening in Vancouver, and that's why I had to expose this in the book, even though some of these people are very legally aggressive.
You said you got attacked, and did you got hesitated, or just maybe you think of stopping doing this, or do you have fear at all?
There's a certain amount of fear of being bullied or of legal threats that make this work difficult to do. But and that can certainly discourage one for a few days or make one lose a little bit of sleep sometimes. But I was raised to believe that the highest service one can do is public service and putting forward the truth, no matter what the consequences, doing the right thing. And so I wouldn't have done this book in the face of, such threats if I didn't believe that this was necessary for Canadian citizens and really citizens of the world to realize how nefarious this network of attack is.
Sam, you previously mentioned that Canada is, such a country that with a very strong laws and a good system. So, what do you think is the fundamental reason that it still could subject to the attack of the Communist Party?
I'll go back to great experts such as David Mulroney, the former ambassador to China, and when I interviewed him, he said this concept of elite capture, and that is that elites in government, academic, professors, leaders in business, influential people in the West will be approached and given great financial benefits, given great flattery, given free trips, junkets to Beijing, where they will be lavished with attention and in some cases, covert gifts of many kinds. There's corruption. Of course, there's corruption in Canada. How deep, how high? That's a question that I continue to determine. And my hope is that the more people that read this book, there will be people that have powerful information, and they will share it with me because they will want to see some people that have been elected or have served in bureaucratic offices that are secretly getting rich offshore. They will want to see those people exposed, and I think I'll be a good candidate to do that exposure.
And you mentioned that you're gonna continue to expose, so you think the story is not complete yet.
That's right. This book, there's a lot of detail in it. There's a lot of information that I didn't reveal. And I do believe there's another story to be told that goes exactly to the question you just asked, and you've asked a few times. If Canada is a country of solid laws, if Canada has such a self-image of its uprightness, how can this 30-year crime trend of a foreign government infiltrating still be allowed to occur? And of course, it's not just espionage. It is a convergence of organized crime, fentanyl kingpins working together with and getting protection from another state. That can't be allowed to proceed. So I want to find the answers of who are the people in Canada that could stop this if they enforce the laws in place, if they put the right resources in counterintelligence and federal police enforcement, but haven't done so. So why haven't they done so, and what needs to happen so that they will do so? Those are the projects I will be working on.
So what would you like to say to our English-speaking audience?
I put 3 years of hands-on work into writing this book. The research goes back to 2005 when I was a journalism student in Vancouver, and it goes farther. I went back to primary research in the early 1990s in Hong Kong. I interviewed the Canadian officials that were there in Canada's High Commission and who had a story to tell of this corruption involving the tycoons and organized crime and how they corrupted really some Canadian officials in efforts to enter Canada. So I would say to all of your audience that years of research went into this book and a lot of effort to tell the story through the eyes of the men and women who were really working diligently to expose very dark things. And many of these sources, their careers were not benefited for what they tried to do. So part of my work is also to support these people that help me get this story.
Here is the book. It's on like Amazon, Barnes Nobles, everywhere you can find it, right?
Amazon chapters, Barnes and Noble, and hopefully more and more shops in the coming months.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sam, for your time and your hard work.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so that's Sam Cooper, the investigative reporter from Canada. So actually, I just read a report which was talking about just recently a case study was published in Canada, which it was a case study by the British Columbia Supreme Court Associate Chief Justice Austin Cullen. He spearheaded a commission to, 5 years ago actually, but until 5 years later, recently published this 165 pages of a case study. So it uncovered a case of a Chinese national who declared only earned like 40,000 in annual income to the Canada Border Service Agency. But this person purchased $32 million of real estate in Vancouver. And it was paid by transfers originating from fake Hong Kong-based entities. So that's just only one case. But, I think Sam Cooper would say this is only the tip of the iceberg. And there are a lot more to be done. And also, I noticed there is a message by Linda on YouTube saying, why do U.S. legislators made so much money by investment while in office if their salary is so low? So, one thing I think, just according to what I know, some of our elected officials, after they termed out or they leave the office, many of them actually got a consulting work to just which is related to the U.S. companies in China. So that's a way for them to make money. And so actually I think that's what President Trump tried to do some of the reform.
Yeah, he did actually.
Right?
Yeah. He had all his cabinet members to sign agreement that not to seek advise the industry that they regulate before. So all the Trump people, they are on their own. Okay, they have to work in the labor to make money to make a living, compared to previous administration whereby if a cabinet member you write a book, you are invited to consult certain industry, they pay you big.
Yeah, but in the a state level, the state legislatures, they are still able to do that. I know of at least one of them, right, in California. He actually when he was in office, he signed voted for the resolutions condemned the Chinese Communist Party's human rights abuse. But after he left the office, he became a consultant and visit China. So that's one way of them making money. So
they're talking about California.
In California,
yes.
Yeah, California legislature. So I think really the CCP, they just according to CCP, okay, if any problem can be solved by with money, it's not a problem for them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, CCP is buying into America, buying into Canada, buying into the West. It's like a tumor. It's cancer tumor, just growing in our society, and it's very corruptive and very it's just 腐蚀性, right? It's just
they collude people. But I think if people can really see through what the nature of the CCP, you don't want those type of money, those red money, because it's gonna rob, make us to lose the freedom, make you lose as a human being's dignity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Corrode our moral value, corrode our people, corrode our politicians. That what they have been doing since 40 years, 50 years ago, when we opened up our arm and embraced them into the international society. And that's so in Pompeo's word, CCP really bite the hand that feed them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Buck Fiden said the CCP is the world's largest organized criminal enterprise.
Yeah, they are
indeed
the master of all criminal organizations. They're just in the same category, so no surprising. All right, okay. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. And
yeah, please, if you can spread the channel and the show for us, so that more people can understand about the nature of the CCP, and then they will know how to deal with that.
Yeah. So press like and don't forget press the subscription, the pin, the little bell, and so that it can be reminded. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm your host Wei Fang.
Kathy Zhang, take care.
Take care. Good night, and
see you next time.
Yeah, on Wednesday.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.